Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here, being on time this morning. We're still getting some people logged on, so we are going to wait to get started just a couple of minutes after the hour. So just sit tight and we will get started soon. All right, we are going to get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We are excited to get rolling here. Thank you all for being on with us. I know for those of you in Hawaii, which might be most of you, you're just getting your day started, so thank you. This webinar is going to cover Hawaii's new Emergency Demand Response Program, or the Battery Bonus Program, that was recently approved. We're going to be going over key provisions, implementation, next steps, and we are also going to be focusing on modeling some commercial projects utilizing the Energy Toolbase custom solution in our modeling platform, and talking about our Acumen EMS that can manage the battery functions to meet these program requirements. A couple of quick housekeeping items before I pass it over to our speakers. We are recording this webinar, and it will be sent out after the webinar is over via email along with the slide deck. So just kind of be on the lookout for that in your inbox. We are going to do the Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have questions, you can chat them through the chat feature, and we will get to those at the end. We have some really great speakers on today's webinar. Rocky Mold, he is the Executive Director of HCEA, Hawaii Solar Energy Association. We want to thank him for being on. He has been instrumental in getting this program to the finish line, among other policies in Hawaii, and many of you might already know him. Jordan Fenner, she is one of the enterprise account managers here at Energy Toolbase, who works on the Acumen EMS project side of ETB. And we are also joined by Adam Gurza. He is the VP of Business Development here at Energy Toolbase. And we have a lot to cover. There's a lot of questions on this topic. So I want to pass things over to Rocky to get us started.
Thank you, Tracy. Really appreciate this opportunity to give a brief background on the Battery Bonus Program. My name is Rocky Mold. I'm the Executive Director of Hawaii Solar Energy Association. We have been around since 1977. I think we're the oldest solar association in the country. We advocate. We are the trade association for the solar industry here in Hawaii. Specifically, the contractors, manufacturers, equipment suppliers, financiers that do distributed rooftop solar and energy storage. So as many of you know, Hawaii has a pretty robust renewable energy policy framework. We have a 100% renewable portfolio standard by 2045. So for the last, 10 years or more, 13, 15 years or so, there have been policies in place to decarbonize our energy system. And this emergency demand response program is sort of coming out of those larger, is a part of the larger policy initiative to decarbonize our economy and energy system. And in that process, it's really, there have been, dockets and proceedings before the Public Utilities Commission. And this comes out of the Distributed Energy Resource Docket, as well as a new docket that was opened up in 2021 for emergency demand response. This actually came out of, the DER docket is looking at sort of successor tariffs to really create a sustainable, rooftop solar and energy market going forward to achieve that larger goal. And what happened is, in doing some modeling, the commission realized that we were potentially going to face an energy shortfall of up to 50 megawatts when we retired our large 185 megawatt AES coal plant. And this came because there were some delays in some utility scale RFP projects. And so the commission asked for emergency DR proposals to mitigate the issue. It happened in pretty short order. The DER parties, the Distributed Energy Resource parties, that's Hawaii Solar Energy Association and some of our allies who have intervened in the docket, the DER docket, put our proposal together and filed it on May 3rd of this year. The other parties, of course, are Hawaiian Electric and the Consumer Advocate. They also filed emergency demand, DR proposals. The proposals actually came part of our larger final proposals in the DER docket that actually have, time of use, tariff in them, as well as sort of longer term proposals for, again, that sustainable market. There was a status conference on May 12th where we presented, along with the other interveners in Hawaiian Electric, our proposal. The commission, in short order, came back and on June 8th issued their decision order number 37816, which established the emergency demand response program with a scheduled dispatch rider. That's the EDRP-SDP. Since then, HECO has filed an implementation plan on June 18th. The DER parties, along with HSEA, filed a letter with recommendations on June 23rd. Let me go, next slide, please. And now, we're already, implementing the program. So essentially, let me go. So to learn more about the program, HECO has launched a battery bonus website that has marketing flyers and FAQ, the amendments and agreement forms that contractors will need to sign members up. There was a webinar on July 28th, and the recording of that is posted on the HECO resource website. HECO is currently accepting applications, but I do want to caution everyone on this call that there are many implementation details that are still being worked out, and those are going to be worked out in sort of upcoming status conferences and PUC filings coming up. But we can see a significant part of what the program's all about. Next slide, please. So some key provisions. Again, HECO is beginning to process the SDP amendment forms. And there are two ways to enroll in this program. There's a quick connect method of enrollment, and information is on that resource site about what that means. And then you can provide the regular amendment forms. The contractor's role in this whole, in reaching out to customers and teaching customers about what this is vital to the rollout of this program. Should be known that all interconnection tariffs are eligible to enroll. So net energy metering customers, existing and new customers are eligible to enroll in this program. CGS, CGS Plus, and SIA customers. Adam will have different different model runs for some of these different tariffs, and it's really key to know what tariff your customer's on when you put this together. The incentive rate, there's a step down incentive rate, and that's that goes the first 15 megawatts you get $850 per kW. I'll go through those a little bit in the next slide. The incentive date is locked in after the initial filing of the SDP amendment form, and also proof of a building permit or a building permit application with the Department of Planning and Permitting at the City and County of Honolulu. We're still getting some clarification on whether Quick Connect, because Quick Connect is sort of a pre-approved route to installing. We're trying to clarify what documents would be needed to lock in the incentive rate on the Quick Connect approach. Right now, Hawaiian Electric is saying that even Quick Connect customers will have to provide an amendment form. So it won't be right at the start of Quick Connect where they'll be able to lock that in. But again, we're seeking clarification. The parties, the HSEA and the DER parties filed our recommendation for implementing an installation deadline yesterday. And I can tell you that that recommendation has not been ordered on or accepted yet. But what we're saying and what we're recommending is that after the first tier of 15, after each tier is achieved, a 3-month installation timeline will kick in. Now, what this will do is it'll clear out any installation or any customers that are sitting in the queue and not going to install, because it's really key. And HSEA's position has been, we really want this program to succeed, to meet that emergency, and we want to prove, the value of rooftop solar and energy storage to be a system resource. And so we want to make sure to hit those numbers. And if there are too many folks not serious about installing and sitting in the queue, it might jeopardize reaching those numbers. There's a July 1st cutoff date for eligibility. So any batteries that received permission to operate prior to July 1st are not eligible for the program. Current systems that are in the queue in interconnection can amend their forms and include an SDP amendment in those forms. We may seek some further clarification on this point as well. Next slide, please. So the benefits of the battery bonus program. Hawaiian Electric will make a one-time upfront performance payment to install a new battery to new and existing customers' systems. The big idea here was to take existing systems that are out there, existing rooftop systems out there without battery capacity, and pair batteries with those systems to be able to shift that solar energy into the evening peak to meet this emergency system need. The payment tiers are $850 per kW of battery capacity for the first 15 megawatts, then $750 for the second 15 megawatts, and then $500 for the final 20 megawatts. Again, our recommendation is to set a clock. When that first 15 megawatts is hit, any system that is in that tier in the queue will have 3 months to install. That's our recommendation. The payment will go to the system owner. This includes potential third-party owners in lease arrangements. And it is treated as taxable income. It is not a rebate. This is a key point. There will be W-9s required for customers in this program. In addition, customers will be able to add an additional 5 kW of PV panels on an AC or standard test condition basis, whichever is less. We're asking our contractors and designers to use prudence in marketing and selling this program. Be sure to size these systems appropriately so that your customers will benefit and the system will benefit. This is not a free giveaway of a battery or money to install a battery for customers. There are requirements that also need to be met, and we'll go over those in a second. From our initial sort of hypothesis and modeling, really this program is best suited to net energy metering customers because they have that retail rate of credit back for their exports. And really you need to run the numbers for programs to really see whether you're going to get a benefit. In addition, battery supply has maybe significantly constrained in the near term here. Part of my job is to be in touch with both our member companies and other battery manufacturers out there that are going to supply this market, and to understand what their constraints are. And with the reopening from COVID and sort of the supply chain issues that we've seen are also affecting battery supply. But we think we'll have adequate supply, in the 2022 timeframe. Next slide, please. So there are requirements. This is what there are technical requirements. Participants who in this program must set their battery systems to dispatch. This is either their own home use or export electricity to the grid for a 2-hour period, sometime between 6 and 8:30 during the system peak. So this is a scheduled dispatch. So the battery must be set to begin dispatching, whether it's for home load or exports, at a set time, sometime between 6 and 8:30 for a 2-hour period. HECO is assigning start times on a minute-by-minute or 5-minute basis, and the going start time is on their website right now, and you'll see, if you go to the Battery Bonus website, it'll say current start time is 6:01, and that's the time that anyone installing that gets in the queue and is installing a system now will have to set that time to. And batteries must be set to prioritize charging during the peak solar installation during the midday, and to reasonably assure that solar generation is going into that battery and being used in this program. In addition, participants will have to provide 7 consecutive days of data within the first 30 days of operation to verify the system is operating. It's a 10-year commitment. The scheduled dispatch program is the first 2 years of commitment until June 23rd, 2023, because that's when the emergency is occurring. Oh, also, this is only for Oahu. This is not for other islands. Be sure it's only for Oahu because the emergency is occurring on Oahu. There will be a phase 2 of this program that will be defined in a forthcoming PUC order. Some ideas have been thrown out there for bring your own device type programs. And of course, we have our ongoing grid services procurement agreements happening right now as we speak. There's another program that's actually, should be looked at as well. And it's, depending on what type of customer, it may actually be more beneficial for kind of existing or new customers that are participating in the new tariff programs, not NEM. And HECO will have the ability to audit and claw back some of that payment for failure to perform. We're working out some of that right now. Really, there is a reasonableness standard that the PUC has talked about, and we want to be sure that there's a reasonable effort to comply with this program, but it's not too stringent at the outset. Next slide, please. Finally, these are some of the DER parties emergency proposal. This is the DER parties emergency proposal in a nutshell. It starts with the scheduled dispatch program, and then we've created a bring your own device level 1 and a bring your own device level 2 proposal. The BYOD level 1 proposal would be really essentially just continuing scheduled dispatch, but expanding the time to 5 to 10 and sort of loosening the stringency a little bit on that peak period when you're delivering. The BYOD level 2 is really specifically a remotely dispatchable emergency program for the grid that we proposed. So to get more information on this, I would recommend folks go to the enroll in the PUC's system and get automatic alerts and see what's going on in the DER docket where all this information lives. So with that, I'm done. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide this background.
All right, thank you, Rocky. Hi, everyone. This is Adam at Energy Toolbase. I'm going to share my screen. I'll assume you're all seeing this unless I hear otherwise. Yeah, I just want to start with a huge thank you to Rocky and to the Hawaii Solar Energy Association for all the work on the docket over the last several months, and also just in the last week or two, I'd say, on circulating really good information about this program. We've been on a lot of the calls that Rocky just mentioned, whether the membership calls or the webinar they hosted, and spending a lot of time really making sure we fully understand this program. And certainly when I jump into some case studies in a moment here on the projects that we're suggesting folks really consider that we deem to be kind of low-hanging fruit, we're getting a lot of our cues from the information that HE has provided. So one other really quick public service announcement here: if you're doing business in Hawaii and you're in the industry and you're not already an HCA member, you absolutely need to become one. Energy Toolbase is a proud member. We just get lots of access and value, and it just really supports the industry's growth. So I just wanted to make sure I was on record saying that. Okay, so really switching gears now to the EDRP program. I'll tell you this: we look at a lot of behind-the-meter energy storage incentive programs around the country, and this one is a good one. And one other notable, I think, comparison point is that it's pretty incredible how quickly the program is getting implemented relative to when it got approved. This is moving very quickly, and again, we've been kind of working behind the scenes to really make sure we're set up to run these projects and have a good workflow, which I'm about to show you. And we're confident we do, and just have a way to be 100% program compliant based on all of the rules Rocky just laid out. And we're going to get into those in just a second. Okay, before I do, I have one more slide that I think is interesting and good for context, which looks at the most recent Oahu interconnection data. I think some folks on the recognize the chart in the bottom right. It's not meant to be legible, but that's I believe a chart that Rocky and HCS circulates once monthly, showing the most updated numbers, and we're pulling from the application executed section on the very bottom. So this is what we deem to be, executed, deployed projects on the island on Oahu right now, and just looking at kind of where most of that capacity is by interconnection tariff. And I think no surprise, the original NEM program up over 50% of total megawatts behind the meter. I think the one that we were especially interested in was the SIA Standard Interconnection Agreement program, which is for commercial customers over 100 kW in PV system size, and that is in second place, I guess, at over 20% of total installed capacity. And those are some of the projects that I think we're really looking towards, especially given the fact that Energy Toolbase, and I think Tracy mentioned this up front in her introduction, our focus really is on this program on the non-residential C&I side, just because our control software, our Acumen EMS, which Jordan's going to tell you about in a minute, is really exclusively focused in that segment. Okay, without any further ado, let's pivot over now into the demo section, where we really get to kind of dig into some case studies where we're looking at the economics of different types of projects based on different types of interconnection agreements and rate tariffs. So I am going to start with an office building. I always like showing just the shape of the load profile of the customer for context, as because this is it turns out, very, very important input into the model, dictating both how much, potentially solar is exporting to grid based on the shape of that load profile. And then also, once we run that EDRP storage dispatch simulation and we're enforcing that 2-hour dispatch from 6 to 8 p.m., it also very much dictates if some of that storage exports to grid, which will, obviously affect economics. Okay, so for the first run here, we're looking at and we're assuming a new solar plus storage project. I'll just kind of maybe mention this now. The second case study I want to talk over is going to be a retrofit project. And I think in some of those HCA calls and even the call that HECO hosted on the program, I think folks are thinking that a fair amount of the rebate capacity very well may go to retrofit projects where there's already an existing solar system in place. So we'll look at both of those, but this first one here is assumes kind of new solar, new storage going in for a commercial customer, in this case, an office building. Okay, so let me just kind of jump around and talk about some of the assumptions that were set. I am running this initial one under a TOUJ rate schedule. I also want to be very transparent what my assumptions are on the interconnection tariff. So I am running this, I suppose, in what would be the most conservative fashion, valuing exported energy at 0. So let's just kind of assume for this one, this is a SIA, standard interconnection agreement, interconnect for this commercial customer. And if they export solar to grid, they are getting no compensation at all for that energy. And again, on the TOUJ rate schedule. On the solar system size for this case study, let me just kind of talk through how I landed on 120 kW DC rated system. This is a really neat and I think applicable feature for Hawaii projects. When we run the optimizations, this bottom one, which simulates exported generation, I believe is really, really important, to get a quick understanding of, based on your customer's load profile and based on the specifications and design of your solar system, how much energy would export to grid. And certainly under a SIA interconnected project, I think the assumption is that the solar would get sized such that very little, if any, solar exports to grid. So that's how I landed on the 120 kW for my initial run here. And you can just see in terms of exports on a percentage basis, it's only about 2%. It's quite low. Let's actually look at how that kind of interplay works for an office building. So I'm going to jump into my visualizer view. I haven't even started talking about storage yet. Let's just kind of really, for now, I suppose, think on the solar side of the equation, actually, and let's just kind of take everything off. So we're looking at that office building load profile, and we're overlaying that solar 120 kW solar system I just sized. Oftentimes what you'll see is, especially with certain types of non-residential load profiles, the Monday through Friday may look, have consistency. Again, we saw this earlier. This is like an 8 a.m. to maybe 6 p.m. Shoulder where, the majority of that customer's usage is coming. And then weekends, that's a Saturday, Sunday over here, you just don't have a whole lot of load. So those are instances where you probably would get some of that, leakage or export back to grid, which I'm going to unpack in just a second here. Some of the other assumptions that I just need to talk through before we can really boil this up and say this is what the all-in economics look like are obviously incentives. It's a huge part of the equation here. So let me just kind of level set what I used on the incentive side of the equation. And these are all very straightforward. On the solar side, we're assuming, you're capturing that 26% tax credit, of course. You're also claiming federal makers depreciation. And then we are taking the Hawaii corporate tax credit. So those would be the three on the solar side. On the energy storage side, of course, we are running this, and I'm going to show you the EDRP compliant simulation in just a minute. This particular case study assumes you were able to get in at that initial level and lock in an $850 per kilowatt incentive level of the program. And then we are also taking both a federal tax credit and depreciation on the energy storage side. We are not claiming a Hawaii tax credit on the storage side. I think in earlier conversations with Rocky and one other knowledgeable developer out there, it sounds like there may be some gray area around that, but we're just going to assume conservatively we're not attempting to take that. Okay, so that's some of the other project inputs that boil in, and now let's talk about the stimulation, the 365-day dispatch that we're performing behind the scenes for this particular run. And Jordan is going to be a good segue later to kind of really talk about our process for working with developers and users on this. Effectively, what we're doing for this program, because we were really motivated to get out a working solution quickly, is we're going to be working with you individually to basically upload an EDRP compliance simulation that we're running behind the scenes. So that's exactly what we did on this particular run here. And I am going to show you. So whatever vendor and system specifications that you're defining, again, that'll be a conversation you'll have with Jordan and or your account manager. And then we're basically uploading that 365-day dispatch. So let's go and look exactly what's happening there back in the demand profile visualization view. Okay, so it's really pretty straightforward. Let's just kind of zoom in on, let's say, a week or so, and you can see we are doing that full dump, that full dispatch at max capacity in that 6 to 8 window. If you kind of see on the bottom of the screen there. So we are, effectively going from a full state of charge based on whatever, the max depth of discharge is, all the way down to, fully dispatching that battery on this particular day. Interestingly, on this office building, what really stood out to me as we were kind of running some of these is, again, there's that effect of like Monday through Friday, based on the customer's load, when we're doing that 2-hour, full dispatch, we are not exporting any energy storage back to grid. That's a good thing. Over here on the weekends, it turns out we do. And again, that's just a result of the fact that this particular customer and load profile doesn't have a lot of 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. load. So this, just to kind of say it bluntly, works against us here because we are exporting kilowatt hours back to grid from the battery. Those kilowatt hours, anything, exporting back, as we talked about on the setup, would be getting valued at 0. So I just want you to know that we are absolutely running kind of a fully compliant simulation behind the scenes. In the case study we're going to look at in a minute on the retrofit scenario, it actually works to our advantage. On this one here, it just so happens it is working against us because that energy would get valued at 0. One other point, this goes back to Rocky's, this day is a really good illustration. So we are absolutely, and this is part of kind of the behind the scenes simulation that we're uploading, we are absolutely charging or attempting to charge entirely from solar. As you can see, it's happening on this day, but there simply just wasn't enough solar on this day. If you were to kind of widen it out, you can just see that that wasn't a particularly good solar day. So we had to go in here and effectively get to that 100% state of charge. We had to do some grid charging. And again, that's another part of the custom simulation we're performing. Again, we're attempting to charge from solar as much as possible, but if there just isn't enough there on a particular day, because maybe it wasn't a sunny day, we'll need to go in and fill in and do grid charging for the balance. Okay, I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but the reality is, as we've started unpacking and really kind of modeling through some of these projects based on different types of interconnection tariffs and based on different rate tariffs and based on different load profiles, this really is the exercise that we're going to be doing with you behind the scenes and attempting to kind of right size both the solar and the storage. And you're obviously balancing a lot of different elements of the deal here. To kind of go to the end state, which folks are probably wondering. So for this particular solar plus storage run, and by the way, I think we're using reasonable installed cost on the solar side. Just to give you context, we're pricing this at $3 a DC watt installed. On the energy storage side, we're coming in at $900 per kilowatt hour of storage capacity installed. Again, those are obviously for you, the developer, to set and define and make sure your margin is baked in there. But for this particular project, based on all eligible incentives, we're coming in at a sub 5-year payback and a internal rate of return in the neighborhood of 15%. Let me just jump into the document really quickly, and we'll just unpack that a little further. One thing I forgot to mention, Rocky mentioned this, which is very, very important. We are also absolutely calculating that the EDRP program incentive is taxable. Okay, so there is a tax consequence to, in this case, for this particular run, that $102,000 total incentive value. We absolutely will. We ran all of this on an after-tax basis. So we are, I think, running this in the conservative and frankly just the more accurate way of doing it by saying that there would be a tax consequence. So I think folks are familiar with kind of how we run our cash flow models. We can present this analysis in lots of different ways, but I just wanted to attempt to be as transparent as possible based on a lot of the assumptions that are feeding this particular run. And again, this is a new solar plus storage project run. Okay, let me pivot over to the other one, and I'm sure I'll probably be getting a bunch of questions in the Q&A side, Tracy. Maybe we'll just hold those for when that arrives. But I want to move now to a retrofit. I think we've done a good amount of thinking on this with the fast track, approval process to really lock in one of those incentives. We think there will be a fair amount of interest and applications that are from existing solar system owners that are, potentially looking to add a battery, meets all of the program rules and requirements, and would be able to get the incentive and capture any additional savings. And that's what we're going to look at in this simulation here, is a retrofit. This is an interesting one. So this particular run, very different shaped load profile. This happens to be what the Department of Energy says is a representative hotel load profile. We'll just kind of, I'll leave it to them because this is their reference file in the OpenEI library, and it's got that second intermediary peak. And this actually just so happens to line up really nicely when we perform, that 6 to 8 dispatch. Here's the PV only version of this run. Everything else in terms of the level set, this one happens to be on a TOUP schedule. On this one, again, I chose to run this on an SIA tariff, assuming 0% zero compensation for exports. As Rocky mentioned in his comments, the math on all of this would change quite a bit if this was a NEM, a legacy NEM interconnected system. And we are absolutely set up and ready to run those, along with any of the other interconnection tariffs that are out there. I think we're expecting that the most prevalent two will be, those legacy NEM ones and SIA ones. But Jordan, who I'm going to pass it to shortly, we are absolutely equipped and ready to run and precisely calculate savings on based on whatever interconnection tariff they're on. Let's very quickly look at, because this is a retrofit, the assumption is that there's already solar on site, and you can actually see for this particular project, there is a little bit of export happening. I think our assumption is if you already installed and interconnected a PV only system on the SIA tariff, you very likely size that such that you don't have a lot of exports to grid. You were wise enough to not leave money on the table, and it was probably very intentionally sized on that solar only project. And I think that's more or less what this is on the entire annual simulation here. And I realize I'm jumping around the page quite a bit. These are just kind of some where the summary views live. This particular solar only run had about 8% exports to grid. And a part of that has to do with the fact that that hotel doesn't have a ton of midday usage, or it's it's certainly not the peak. So you might just see a little bit of export there. Okay, without any further ado, I think this is really the key run here, where we're now adding in an EDRP compliant storage system onto that site that we already assumes has solar. I, on this particular one, just to give context, ran a 120 kW, 248 kWh battery, which I believe is the specs of BYD, which is one of the vendors we work with, and Jordan will tell you a little bit more about in a minute here. Let's look at the simulation we uploaded behind the scenes and just talk through what's happening here. So again, we're absolutely enforcing that full 2-hour dispatch in the 6 to 8 window. Now this one's pretty neat because we just so happen to capture a couple of additional bill savings opportunities in this run. So this is on the TOUP rate, and notice the 6 to 8 window happens to coincide with the on-peak rate that's on the bottom of the screen. That's about 27.5 cent energy, and we're charging the battery mostly off-peak in the 19.5 cent range. We're also getting a little bit in the morning there. It looks like mid-peak 24.5 cents. So this is nice. We just coincidentally, I guess, are capturing bill savings as a result, time use arbitrage bill savings as a result of the fact of the schedule that we're assuming this customer's on. And this one's nice also because we are absolutely also preventing some exports to grid. That's why I wanted to show you the solar only run, where I think it was 8% over the 12-month period. And we're here actually able to, on this particular simulation, based on this system size, we would be reducing those exports all the way down to 0. So we're getting a couple, I'll call it like, complementary or ancillary benefits. We're preventing solar exports, which is quite valuable by preventing, any 0 cent exports to grid, and we're also capturing a little bit of TOU arbitrage value. So that equates to, I always like to look at it in dollar per kilowatt hour terms, about $28 per kilowatt hour of storage capacity. So to just put that into dollar terms very quickly, and I'm going to be wrapping up in just a second, at 248 kilowatt hours of storage capacity, we're saving about $7,000 a year on top of capturing that EDRP incentive, of course. And you'll notice that this is kind of baking up to one other point of context. This is a retrofit run. We have a custom workflow today. I think a lot of folks may already be aware of this, where your account manager has coached you on, but effectively behind the scenes, this entire financial model is basically just showing cost and savings of storage. So even though we had a solar in the project, we're basically ignoring that. So the economics here, when I summarize this all to say that, we're coming in at about a 6.5-year payback, about a 9% IRR over term. This is exclusively on the storage retrofit piece of the puzzle, which I hope makes sense. And I'm looking like I'm probably already pressed up against time. Jordan, I'm just about to pass it off to you. I think I was just going to leave it like on this slide here. And I know Tracy is going to circulate this deck. I think the way we're looking at this program from the CNI side, knowing it's going to be pretty competitive out there, we certainly expect to see a lot of applications come in, many of which I think are expected to be from the residential sector. So our job here and the way we're thinking about this is identifying, what some of those advantageous non-residential projects could be. And we think the puzzle that we'll need to solve is piecing together some different value streams. Obviously the incentive, obviously taking full advantage of any other incentives, tax-based incentives out there, capturing bill savings if possible. And this is something we'll have to run with you individually that Jordan's going to hit on in a minute. And one thing I didn't mention at all, I think was in Rocky's comments, and it was made very clear by the HECO folks, is that you are absolutely also entitled to resiliency and backup power. And there's obviously a lot of benefit there that we didn't like quantify in dollar terms. So in other words, like maybe it's a 6.5-year payback plus you get the benefits of the backup. And we definitely have the if applicable stamp there, which Jordan can talk on, as some of the vendors we work with offer that right off the shelf. Others, it's an add-on service. So Jordan, I think I'm going to end it there and pass it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Adam. Jordan here. I'm on the enterprise team at Energy Toolbase, where we focus on providing an even higher level of support on industry-leading incentives and markets, and leveraging all of our software to do so. Now, this program is a great step towards Hawaii's commitment to sourcing 100% of its electricity from renewables by 2025, while also utilizing batteries for grid stabilization. Rocky, you gave a very nice overview of the program, and Adam, as always, does a great job of diving into case studies for real-world examples. Now, let's talk about how you can leverage the ETB team with your specific projects. We are already seeing a high volume of interest in Hawaii's battery bonus program. And in order to help speed up and streamline the development process, our team is offering to run the analysis for you. So whether you are a developer, an EPC, or financing entity, we have the ability to demonstrate the battery dispatch and savings from this program for your projects at no cost to you. We will utilize our ETB developer platform that Adam was just sharing to model the economic benefit of the EDRP-SDP program, including any additional bill savings and applicable incentives. So in a nutshell, we leverage our in-house rates database to calculate the utility costs, model the savings, and present the project economics. Next slide, please. Many of you here today are likely familiar with ETB Developer, but I'd also like to bring attention to our full suite of services that allow you not just to model, but also to control and monitor the projects through their entire life cycle, from project conception to end of life. The industry trusts us for our modeling capabilities, and now you can use our battery controls and manage your assets with our Acumen EMS and monitoring platform. Batteries really need to be managed properly in order to produce value. With our controls, we're able to maximize the savings from batteries by providing signals for when to charge and discharge, along with how much to discharge and under what circumstances. Next slide, please. In the case of Hawaii's demand response program, we will use our AI and machine learning controls to dispatch the battery during the program's required 2-hour window, while also intelligently monetizing additional value streams, such as energy arbitrage and peak shaving where applicable. One item to note is that Hawaii is currently set up as a 2-year program under the battery bonus program, but there's a 10-year commitment. So after the first 2 years, you can stay on this existing program or transition to an alternative program. But this successor program is still being developed and the requirements are not clear yet. So at the end of the day, our Acumen EMS control strategies can be changed and updated in the future if necessary to adopt to new program requirements, new rates, and more. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what Adam was talking about, some of our hardware partners. So at ETB, we integrate our controls with battery hardware partners, making it easier to model on the platform and then deploying systems with that same intelligence. When using our Acumen EMS, you'll have the opportunity to leverage our ESS hardware partners. We are hardware agnostic, meaning our controls can pair with any battery of your choosing. But with how quickly we expect the program to meet its cap, existing integrations will allow you to obtain ESS pricing and streamlined procurement to help drive the development and engineering stages, because we know that we're going to have to move quickly in order to secure the incentive. Next slide, please. Okay, I wanted to give you guys a little sneak peek of the new UI for our monitoring platform, which will be formally released at SPI this year. So once a project is deployed, compliance is an integral part of Hawaii's program, and our monitoring platform meets these requirements. So Hawaii is requiring 7 days of operational data for initial validation, just like Rocky went over, and we can provide that information. We also have detailed analytics and battery performance data that can be downloaded and provided at any time. So if, for instance, you get audited, we will have all of the documentation and data to be able to provide to HECO. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's run through some of the housekeeping items. In order for us to run the initial savings analysis, it's important that we obtain all of the relevant project details. Some of the information that we will need is which of the interconnection programs you are on or will be participating in. Utility bills will also be helpful for confirming rate tariffs and applicable charges. Ideally, we would also like to have a year's worth of interval data for the energy consumption and 8760 data for projects with existing solar. So if solar is already installed, the system specs or a single line drawing would also be really helpful. If any of this information is not available, we will work with you. Our team is here to help identify the best path moving forward. But I wanted to keep it short and sweet here, so we had time for Q&A. That's everything I wanted to cover today. So I'm going to pass the ball back to Tracy. Thank you very much.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Thank you guys, Rocky, Jordan, and Adam. We are running to the top of the hour, so we're going to try to be mindful of everybody's time during Q&A. We do want to get to some. And then, of course, we have everybody's email on the screen. So if you have any questions, please, send them an email. They are open to questions. They're open to talking with you. So the first one is, will we run the analysis in ETB for commercial and residential projects? And that one I think is good for Jordan.
We will actually just be focusing on commercial projects for the analysis support side here.
Okay, thank you. And I am going to hit on this one because you had it on the slide before about the project information. If somebody has project information that they'd like, our team to look at, or analyze, how do we have that done? More specifically, maybe if somebody's not an Energy Toolbase user and they don't have an account with ETB Developer. And I'll send, to you, Jordan.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we are still happy to take a look at the project, and what we can do is send over an intake form that has all of the items that we are requesting in order to run the analysis. So you can see on the screen here our contact information. Feel free to reach out. We will send over the intake form, and then we will have a follow-up call to make sure that we obtain all of the appropriate information.
All right, thank you. I don't know if this one is better for Adam or Rocky, but somebody asked, is the smart export tariff included?
Yes. Hi, this is Rocky. The short answer is yes. Basically, the SDP program, the EDRP program, was designed as a rider and an amendment to existing tariffs. So for existing, it's just an amendment form. So for new tariffs going forward, including the smart export, that you can amend that with an SDP as well.
Thanks, Rocky. And we kind of mentioned throughout the webinar that, some of these details on this program are still changing and there are going to be some updates to it. Is there a spot that people can go to just make sure they have the latest updates on the program? And I'll probably shoot that, to you, Rocky.
This is Rocky, yeah. So I think really it depends on how deep you want to get into it. eventually I think HSEA, we are going to be providing for our members continual updates on the status of this program. And there, as I mentioned, there are still some implementation details that are being worked out. So I do think it's very important for folks to keep an eye on this. In addition, you can go straight to the horse's mouth, and that is the Public Utility Commission's website and their document management system. And you would want to sign up for notifications on docket number 2019-0323, which is the DER, Distributed Energy Resource Docket. And there you will get the most comprehensive information and details on what's happening. But also there is a HECO resource website that is useful, that has marketing materials, and that's getting more and more stuff on it. And that is at hawaiianelectric.com/battery bonus. That'll get you there.
And we will include that link, that helpful link, in the follow-up emails, just so everybody has it and has direct access to it. Here's one on an energy storage system that already has solar. Is that eligible for the ITC? Probably go to you, Adam, on that one.
Yeah, I did not cover that in my remarks. This is a super important one, and the question comes up a lot. I'd start by saying, number one, as a big disclaimer, Energy Toolbase, we are not tax advisors, we are not CPAs, so we're giving, sharing information, but do not rely on us for, formal tax eligibility guidance. This topic is, I'd say, gray. There is literature out there. We actually have 2 hyperlinks in the deck on that slide that kind of point to basically the only thing we know. In 2018, the IRS did a private letter ruling. It was actually for a residential energy storage project that was retrofitting onto a site that already had PV. And in that private letter ruling in 2018, they ruled yes, if it charges 75% or more from solar and meets those requirements, it would in fact be eligible. In the last 3 years, there's been no further guidance. I think some of the top law firms in the space, we actually linked to a K&L Gates deck and workbook that gets updated pretty regularly, and I would classify them as one of the top law firms in the industry following these issues. Their language there was like something to the effect of like, possibly and likely you could be eligible, but it is still some shade of gray. In the run I did, to be very clear and transparent, on the retrofits and on the retrofit case study I ran, I did assume a tax credit for the energy storage system, but we would definitely encourage you to confirm this and with an accountant and a tax advisor, and not lean on us entirely for that.
All right, thank you, Adam. We are kind of at the top of the hour, and like I said, I kind of want to be mindful of everybody's time. So we're going to end the webinar here. If you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our team is here to answer any of the questions you have or help you with any of your projects. Again, everyone's email is on the screen, so be on the lookout for that follow-up email. That's going to include that recording and this slide deck. That includes those helpful links we had just talked about. And our enterprise team, Jordan Fenner, wants to help you get the most out of this incentive. So don't hesitate to contact us, even if you aren't an ETB developer user, and we will get in touch with you and set up a meeting. So thank you again to our speakers, especially Rocky, for taking the time to be on today's webinar and provide us with tons of great info on this program and helping get it implemented. So have a great day, everybody, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.